everyone, Ruby Ravel here, a vixen of vengeance, a resident from the city of Wrath, here to talk to you today about Sun, Trine, Pluto. Many astrological commentators have compared the characteristics of the planet of Pluto to Lucifer, to the devil, to the prince of darkness. So I thought it would be interesting to begin by exploring some of the mythology of that infernal personage and seeing how it relates to some of the effect that Pluto transits or placements can have on our nature. Now, the scriptural references to Satan, the adversary, the devil, are actually relatively scant. A lot of the concept we have of him is really built up from lots of extra-canonical literature, poetry, folk belief, and a healthy plundering of ancient religions. In the old religions of Zoroastrianism and Manichaeism, there was this concept of this eternal struggle between dark and light, between good and evil. And in Zoroastrianism, there was the idea that you had the creator god, Ahura Mazda, who was the begetter of all good, beautiful, wondrous, light and pure things in the world. And then he had an eternal dark nemesis that was always attempting to corrupt, defile, mutilate, and pervert whatever he brought into being. And that concept really later translated into the devil then being the personification of that corruption, of that temptation, of that perversion, of that leading away from light and purity into the realms of the forbidden, of the dark, of the taboo, which is where the planet Pluto is very comfortable. He equates with the Jungian concept of the shadow, that if we were to dualize the personality to make things a little easier, we have the part of us that we like to identify with. You could say this is the solar part of us, the part of us that we do feel is luminous, great, heroic, and pure, that we want others to see, but which we also only really want to see as well. But if we look and dig deeply enough, we are aware that behind that solar luminous facade, there is a whole lot of buried and repressed conscious material that we choose to keep pushed down because we don't want other people to see it, and we also don't want to see it ourselves. We don't want to believe that some of these things that we have decided within us are distasteful, ugly, unlovable, or what have you, are really part of us. We want to believe that they are somehow, invasive cells from another species, or something that maybe a demon has implanted in us, if we want to think more with the medieval mind. It's something we find difficult to admit is part of the total whole cosmology of who we are. The problem is, the more you repress something and push it down and try and contain it, the more power and momentum it derives from being so enclosed. If you hold down a spring, when you finally do release it, then the force of it leaping upwards is going to be that much greater. If you have some water boiling on the hob, that's fine, but put a lid on it and suddenly the heat inside redoubles and intensifies. And Pluto has that same effect, that when it touches any planet, it puts this kind of dark, shadowy container over it. It makes it secretive, it makes it enigmatic, it makes it stealthy, and everything that is contained and held back develops this brooding, ferocious power that can be used in marvelously creative and focused ways, but which can also be very destructive to both self and others if we don't know how to sit with that fire that is entrapped within us. So if we go back to Lucifer for a moment, the idea in all of these extra-canonical folk beliefs was that originally the devil had been an angel. He had been one of the great choristers of God, ushering in the light. But when he was asked to worship God's creation, Adam and Eve, his pride was too great. He had this image of himself as being a celestial being, a heavenly being, something that was inherently greater and higher and more powerful than these puny things of the earth made of clay. So when he was asked to bow to God's mortal creations, he was filled with disgust because he saw them as being beneath them in the same way that an old-fashioned nobleman might look down on a tramp or a beggar. He saw them as belonging to different levels of the hierarchy and the aristocracy of the heavens. And Pluto as a planet is strongly connected with the idea of a kind of a wrathful pride, a wanting to hold on to our own power and greatness in defiance of anything that we see as opposing us. But also that part of us that detests being under the suzerainty of someone else's control. Pluto does not like to be told what to do. He would much rather be the one giving orders. So when God tells him to do something that he doesn't want to do, his pride is too great. He refuses to do it. But even then, he doesn't give up. Even when he is cast down into hell, he then becomes the ruler and the sovereign of that realm. And if we look at the mythology of Milton's Paradise Lost, the devil doesn't just sit there patiently in hell going, well, I guess this is just where I'm going to be now. Or he doesn't think, I'm going to atone and maybe try and work my way back up into the heavens. Instead, he wants to set himself up as the antithesis of God and the antithesis of heaven. He wants to be the challenger of that celestial rulership. And so that poem centers on the idea that Satan is gathering his hordes of demons and fallen angels and monsters and demogorgons and Lamia to rise up to the heavens and overthrow it, obviously drawing upon older mythologies like the Titanomachy from ancient Greece, where the Titans try to overthrow the rule of Zeus. So again, if we draw this character of the devil back to the idea of Pluto, Pluto has a very long memory. He has a strong sense of his own personal worth, his own personal power, and his own need to be in control. But he has also a sense of justice to himself. And if he feels himself to have been wronged, if he feels himself to have been treated in a way that is not in accordance with his pride, then he wants to get revenge for it. He holds on to the wrongs that he feels have been done to them, and he turns what could just be let out and disappear into a small cinder and keeps fanning it with his memory of it. It's like when someone's done something to piss you off or to injure you or wound you in that way. Sometimes you can feel yourself beginning to relax, beginning to let go, beginning to feel perhaps a bit more forgiving or tolerant or detached about what happened in the past. And then suddenly Pluto comes along and it's like, no! I will not forgive. I will not permit to believe that anyone could ever have treated me that way. I will hoard as much power and flames and fury as I can so that I can be on the defensive just in case anyone ever tries to treat me like that again. So as a consequence, it's not unusual for people with Pluto in aspect to the Sun to consciously identify themselves as being rebels, as being anarchists, as being people whose mission in life it is to overthrow, challenge, and expose the injustices of the world as it currently is and as it is currently ruled. If they see what ever existing gods we have on the thrones of our times, then those Plutonian solar people often see themselves as being the iconoclasts, the people who want to reveal that everything is not what it seems, that whatever you see superficially before you, no matter how glorious, respectable, magnificent, or holier than thou it might be, the Pluto solar person wants to be the person who does an X-ray of this and says, this is what your holier than thou figure looks like underneath. So that desire to expose the hidden, to be the forensic criminologist who is sniffing for the clues that expose a deeper reality, can express itself through someone's personality in many different ways. The sun in our horoscopes is often connected to our aims and our ambitions in life, as well as our raison d'etre, the reason we feel we are here. And if someone has that divine, wrathful sense of justice, or that desire to uncover the hidden, it could play out in all kinds of different ways, you know. Someone might want to be an expose journalist who wants to mud rack, who wants to take the great politicians and priests and empowered glitterati of our times, and to be the one who says, well, you might think these figures are great, you might worship them and celebrate them and throw money and accolades at them, but this is what they do in their private life. This is the weird Masonic rituals they get up to. This is the weird devilish orgies that they get involved with. These people aren't who they are claiming to be. And I think one of the reasons a Pluto solar person can feel the need to expose this darkness and corruption is because they are so conscious of what they themselves are hiding. These people are aware of having a lot of depth and complexity and pain and difficulty and darkness within them. And usually because their experience is in life will have shown them this side of experience earlier than other people. I think with very Plutonic people, very often they didn't get to have the same innocent or naive upbringing as the rest of us. They got shown the dark depths of how painful, cruel, and manipulative and horrifying life can be earlier than the rest of us. They didn't get to linger too long in that Edenic garden. They were aware of having been cast out of some kind of place of superficial beauty earlier than other people. And obviously that can make you personally feel a lot of anger, as though you personally have been punished by the gods for not being blessed with the same innocence and as other people. But I think someone with Sun Trine Pluto may start to see that insight then as being a source of power. They realize that they have this almost psychic phonian ability to see things that others cannot, to perceive things that others cannot, to go to the very depths and core of something where other people only see the superficial reality. You have to remember that Pluto is the natural ruler of Scorpio, which is in opposition to Taurus, that is ruled by Venus. Venus is a goddess of ascetics, of fashion, of beauty, of social harmony. But with Venus, it's very much the beauty of external appearances. We look at a tree and we see that it's beautiful. We look at a butterfly with the wonderful, colourful patinations of its wings and we see that it's glorious. We see someone walking down the street with long blonde hair and wearing a beautiful dress and we say, wow, that person is beautiful. And we are influenced by a phenomenon known as the halo effect, where if we see someone as beautiful, if we see someone as radiating an external beauty, we assume that that must be projected from an inner core of internal beauty at the same time. But also Venus is the ruler of social harmony. So much maintaining of social harmony and politesse and pleasantness between people just means saying the right things and doing the right things and behaving in the right way. There's a sense of social order and etiquette to Venus. If you want people to like you, you go about smiling, you're polite, you make the right inquiries, you respond in the right way. But the Pluto person is kind of horrified by these things, because it feels that all of these masks, all of these outer forms of being nicey nice are false in some way, that they are being done solely to evict a certain effect. In fact, there may be a lot of deliberate power play in going about seeming so beautiful and pleasant. So there's an air of suspicion and cautiousness to the Sun, Trine, Pluto person, where they never take the revealed and superficial aims or actions of someone as given, but always ask themselves, what's their real motivation here? What's their ulterior motive? What are they really trying to get from behaving this way? And because of this, the Sun, Trine, Pluto person can sometimes be quite held back and brooding and restrained. They do not trust people easily, because they are aware of everything that they've got hidden within them, which could potentially be invidious, untrustworthy, or dangerous to themselves. So it's almost like when they feel that pull to get close to someone, to know someone, to perhaps maybe risk sharing themselves with someone, they need to go through this long period of carefully assessing them at the distance, subjecting them to their forensic, penetrating gaze, looking at all that's hidden within them and deciding whether they are worth the risk of getting close to. Because they know that everyone is going to have some monsters and skeletons in their closet. It's just a case of picking between the monsters and the skeletons in their closet that you actually find quite sexy, and those which are just repulsive and repellent to you. But speaking of being being sexy and mysterious, that can be a quality as well that some Sun, Trine, Pluto people may possess. I spoke about the power that happens when something is contained, when there's that sense of pressure put upon it. And the need to be in control of oneself can be very strong in a Sun, Trine, Pluto person. It might not in their earlier days. In their earlier days, they might be much more openly rebellious and inimical, and this warrior terrorist of the state who, goes around wearing Gothic apparel and very much owning the fact that they are the enemy and antichrist of present civilization. But the thing is, Pluto likes subtlety. Pluto realizes that going around wearing your aims and intentions on your sleeves actually can often have the opposite effect to what you're intending. That Pluto, at his most efficacious, works best when he is being subtle, when he is being cunning, when he is being calculating, where he has plotted everything out like a mastermind. There is a wonderful song by Taylor Swift called Mastermind, which is perhaps more expressive of a Venus aspect in Pluto rather than the Sun. But she conveys this idea of all the planets and the stars aligning to bring her and someone else together. And yet she reveals, as the song progresses, that all of these apparently fated meetings that happened with her and the lover that she wanted to be with were all carefully constructed and engineered by her. And this is very much how Sun, Trine, Pluto likes to approach things. If it really wants something, then it wants it with all the blazing, furious desire and repressed passion of hell. Sun, Trine, Pluto has a complex relationship with its passions, because it likes the power and the fire that being passionate and driven and angry give you, but it's also afraid of how those powers can consume us. When we feel so angry, when we feel so desirous, when we feel so driven by rage and lust, that fire within us can be so strong sometimes that it almost feels like this demon possessing us, like we've been suddenly hijacked by this spider or serpent creeping up our spine, crawling into our brainstem, infecting all of our neurons and just driving us crazy with madness and desire until finally we get the thing we want, and it's like we can return to sober human calm again. We have exercised and eviscerated that bestial animal nature that took over us. The idea, and while that can be nice if we are choosing to give in to that, if we are choosing to surrender to that passion within controlled environments, that's one thing. But if those forces literally take over you to the point where you cannot control yourself, that is the more difficult problem for a Sun, Trine, Pluto person. They want to be able to feel that power and to use it consciously according to their own volition, rather than that power taking control of them, so it makes them do things that on a conscious human level they don't want to do. So learning some kind of discipline of self-control is very important for these people. And some Pluto people may be so horrified by the dark brooding ferocity that they feel within them that they actually develop a lifestyle where they may want to try and minimize that and contain that through spiritual means. You know, many writers have pointed out that a lot of very Plutonic people, rather than being these sexy demons of sin, can just as likely be, you know, monks and mystics, where they are taking that energy and they are trying to alchemize it into something else. You know, in Tantric Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism, you know, that kind of raw, powerful energy is associated with Kundalini, that serpent that rises up your spine, which can give you tremendous spiritual power, but which can also destroy you if you don't know how to contain it. You know, if we go back to the analogy of the pot, if you're turning the heat on the hob that is heating the pot up to full blast, you've got to make sure that pot is made from a strong enough material that it can contain all of the raging waters within it. And I think as well with the Plutonic person, they want to develop a self and a personality that is strong enough that they can feel all this madness burning and sizzling inside them, and yet all you see on the exterior is just this very composed, very controlled person, and yet who has a touch of hidden desire and esoteric power going on inside them. So all of that spent up power can be very intoxicating. It can be very charismatic. You know, Pluto is associated with dictators and strong military rulers, precisely because these people can seem to have a furious power speaking through them that is not their own, that the divine wrath of the gods has temporarily seized them and made them a mouthpiece for those words of deeper, potent utterance. So the Sun, Trine, Pluto person wants to find a way of being at peace with their own inner intensity, of being conscious of their own inner depths. And these people may eventually be drawn to, you know, psychology or very psychological forms of spirituality, because all of these different art forms are trying to get to depths, get to terms with the hidden depths of what it means to be human. You know, whereas the Venusian socialites are going out there being all nicey nice, they don't want to worry about the small talk. They don't want to worry about being nicey nice. They want to get to grips with all of the dirty soil where we hide all our shit and monsters and writhing insects and Lovecraftian beasts. The Pluto people are de profundis, you know, they want to look at things below the microscope. So just as easily a very Plutonic person might want to be, you know, a quantum physicist or a biologist, another person who is seeing that behind the superficial reality we are perceiving, there are these hidden depths. A Plutonic person might just as easily want to be an astrologer, because again, when I am meeting someone, I am using the lens of astrology to penetrate beneath whatever their facade or their rising sign is trying to present to me, and to look at all those planets that they may have in their horoscopes that they're uncomfortable with, but which are playing out in patterns that are ruling and governing their lives in terrifying subconscious ways. A doctor or a nurse or someone working in a care home might just as well be a very Plutonic person, because care homes and hospitals are basically the madhouses of the present. They are these places where we foist all of those people that we don't want to see, the sick, the dying, and those who've been dispossessed of their rational consciousness. Sun, Trine, Pluto people feel more comfortable in those areas where they are seeing the raw, bestial truth of someone than in fields where they have to be too superficial or take the apparent for a given. So the Sun, Trine, Pluto person also tends to have an all or nothing relationship with how it does things. Like I said, the Sun is representative of our aims and aspirations and our objectives in this life. And when the Sun, Trine, Pluto person has decided they want something, they want it with every last burning cell of their being. Many things leave them cold. Many things seem very flat and dull and below their interests. If they're really going to commit to something, they want their whole body to be aflame with desire. They want it to be this thing that they can't live without. Things are taken up to that life and death intensity, because Pluto is connected to our survival. And when we are very conscious of survival, we're also very conscious of anything that is inimical to our survival. We're very conscious of anything that could potentially destroy us and cause us to end as human beings. And this can sometimes translate in the Plutonic person into a very all or nothing psychology, where either someone or something is helping them and facilitating in their aims. If they're the devil, then these are the people who are the fellow winged bat-like beasts that are also willing to sacrifice everything to take on those false gods who've demonized them. But if they see anyone or anything as not supporting them in their intensive aims, they can very easily turn any of those things into enemies. It's very much the psychology of, you are either with me or you are against me. Either you are someone who I love and I'm committed to and would die for, or you are someone who is fucking killing me by the way in which you are holding me back from doing the thing I am trying to do. So they can accelerate sometimes very easily to levels of globalized rage, where things yo-yo between extremes, and it can be very hard to control. I find, like, when I've been going through this Sun, Trine, Pluto planet now, I felt myself being much more guarded, much more worried, much more cagey, much more likely to feel that infernal fury at any little thing that appears to be obstructing me. If it's just a case of walking down the street and someone is in the way of where I am going. If I was in more of a Venusian, Taurian, Libran mood, I might be like, oh, that's okay, well, there's no rush, things will happen when they happen. I don't own this street, people can get in the way if they want to. But when I'm in Sun, Trine, Pluto mode, I feel like if I don't keep fully controlled of myself, the very fire inside me could foment an apocalypse. That's how furious I am that this person has gotten in my way. But not only have they gotten in my way, it feels like they are doing it spitefully. It feels like they are doing it maliciously to intentionally slow me down. Nay, not just them, but it feels like the gods themselves are trying to slow me down. And that sense of being opposed actually gives the Sun, Trine, Pluto person even greater fire, even greater fury. If they took it too easily, then they could be relaxed. But when someone is against you, it does give you this kind of power, this kind of drive, which can achieve an awful lot. You know, these rebel leaders, these zealots who overthrew existing forms of government, they weren't known for being calm, placid, peaceable people, because calm, placid, peaceable people don't want to rock the boat. They are happy to stick with whatever system gives them the easiest time to not go against the status quo if it means that their lives aren't in danger. And yet Pluto people, because Pluto is a collective planet, are also connected with the idea of the greater collective survival of the human race. And so when they are speaking out against injustices, it's not just against themselves, it's against the whole world. You know, if someone is trying to stand up for the ecological preservation of the world, then they're going to be very conscious of all those in the powers that be, of those who are in systems of government and corporate power who are holding us back from making the necessary changes that would actively improve the world. These are the people who would rather die than sit still and just allow things to carry on peaceably as they are, like the Venusian person might. They would rather put themselves in danger than commit to a lie. So that sense of being committed to a deeper truth is something that is also true of the Plutonic person. And of course, that deeper truth can also be dangerous. You know, many criminals, many terrorists, many maniacs like Charles Manson also have that sense of Plutonic rage, of wanting to project the personal injuries that have been done to them onto a globalized evil world out there. So when we are dealing with Pluto, we really have to be willing to dig deep and to be accountable for our own furies and not just project them globally onto everything, and to just see the world as this bestial place of sin in which everyone is evil, everyone is corrupt, everyone is out to get you, and you can never relax for a fucking moment, because the moment you go to sleep or let your guard down, that's when they get you. So, you know, the sun is all about being conscious. And when the sun is in aspect to Pluto, we really have to be conscious of our own Plutonic energies and of those of other people around us. We have to be aware of them, otherwise they can control them, otherwise they can make us do explosive, dangerous, radical things. You know, if we're going to do explosive, dangerous and radical things, they should be things that we have been conscious of, that we have thought about, that we have planned out, that we have chosen to commit to, rather than done them just in a moment of madness where, again, it felt like the spidery side of Pluto crawled into us and temporarily took us over and made us do something that we're ashamed of when the conscious mind comes back in again. So I was reading a book recently by Erin Sullivan, which she was saying when you're going through a Pluto transit, whether it's just a global transit or a transit to your personal chart, it's usually good to find something to be obsessive and fixated on. Something that you have chosen to direct and pour all of that intense fiery energy towards, that is connected to a particular aim or ambition or aspiration you personally have. Because if you don't, Pluto will choose an obsession for you. And it might not always be a healthy one, and it might not always be one that's doing you or anyone else any good. So finding something that is worthy of that cutting insight and that furious energy that refuses to give up because it feels like everything in the world is trying to make it give up, and therefore it only feels an even greater and more pronounced pride that will not give in to those things. That powerful infernal sense of defiance that says, I will do what I have to do even if the whole world is against me, because I know what the deeper truth is. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Hope you enjoyed this devilish video. For those of you with strong Pluto aspects or experiences of Pluto transits and progressions, including the current one, please do share. Share, like, and subscribe. Share any stories of your own in the comments. It's always nice to hear from you and learn from you. If you want to explore any of your own Plutonic depths a bit more personally, one-to-one with me as an astrologer, you can message me on email at thestarsunraveled@outlook.com. You can follow me on Instagram at astrologyinunderwear, and you can support me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/thestarsunraveled.